But what was interesting to me about him was he had 3 Michelin stars and he was still trying to learn how to get better.
She was like, Jacqueline, if they play Getaway Car or Maroon, she's on crisis watch.
Disney's live-action Snow White isn't just another remake. It's shaping up to be one of the most polarizing films in recent memory. What started as a highly anticipated reimagining of a beloved classic has turned into a full-blown cultural storm, complete with fan outrage, PR nightmares, and a skyrocketing budget. But here's the real question: has Disney crossed a line that fans aren't willing to forgive? Or is this simply growing pains as the company pushes for more modern storytelling? From accusations of disrespecting the original to fears of an epic box office disaster, this story has everything. And if you thought the backlash over The Little Mermaid was intense, you're in for a ride. Let's break down what's really going on behind the scenes and whether Snow White 2025 will be a groundbreaking success or Disney's most expensive cautionary tale.
No, and I feel like it was like that for a lot of us. It's easier for me than it was for Tom because I wasn't playing a character that had already existed in the previous films, and those performances are so wonderful that you don't want to try to recreate anything because there's the fear of failing miserably. But also, it's 64 years before the original films take place, the original books, and Francis Lawrence, who directed Catching Fire and both Mockingjay films, and Nina, who produced all of the Hunger Games content, they didn't put any pressure on us to try to recreate anything.
In 1937, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs wasn't just another animated movie, it was a revolution. As the first full-length animated feature in Hollywood history, it marked Walt Disney's audacious leap into uncharted territory. Skeptics thought it would fail, but instead, it captivated audiences worldwide and cemented Disney's status as a creative powerhouse. The film wasn't just a box office hit, it became a cultural touchstone, enchanting generations with its timeless story of magic, love, and resilience. It introduced iconic elements that became synonymous with Disney itself: the evil queen, the magic mirror, and Snow White's innocence and charm. For many, Snow White isn't just a movie, it's a symbol of childhood memories, family traditions, and the power of dreams. The nostalgia tied to it runs deep, making any attempt to reimagine it a delicate balancing act.
And my advice to them was to not hear the noise as much, to continue doing the job that we've entrusted them to do,
right?
Which is to tell the truth, to state the facts, to present the news in an accurate and a fair and in a timely basis.
When Disney announced a live-action remake of Snow White, fans felt a mix of excitement and nerves. After all, this wasn't just any classic. It was the classic, the film that laid the foundation for Disney's global empire. With the studio's previous live-action remakes like Beauty and the Beast and Aladdin raking in billions at the box office, it seemed inevitable that Snow White would be next. Many fans hoped it would be a respectful homage to the original, while offering enough new elements to feel fresh and relevant. The announcement came with a wave of curiosity. How would Disney handle the timeless elements of the story, like the Seven Dwarfs and the Evil Queen, in today's cultural climate? Speculation ran wild about casting choices, the tone of the film, and whether it could avoid the pitfalls that plagued other remakes. Fans took comfort in knowing that if Disney could modernize The Jungle Book while staying true to its spirit, Snow White had the potential to shine. The excitement grew even more when Rachel Zegler, fresh off her acclaimed role in West Side Story, was cast as Snow White. She was young, talented, and charismatic, seemingly the perfect fit for the role. Her casting sent a clear message: Disney was betting on a fresh face who could carry the weight of such an iconic character. However, whispers of concern soon followed the praise. Reports emerged that this wouldn't be a faithful adaptation, but a complete reimagining of the classic story. Rumors hinted at major changes to Snow White's character, the absence of the traditional prince storyline, and even the replacement of the Seven Dwarfs with a group of diverse magical companions. Some fans were intrigued, hoping for a modern feminist retelling. Others felt uneasy. How far could Disney deviate from the original before it became unrecognizable? Then came the interviews, where the tone surrounding the project took a sharp turn. Rachel Zegler's comments about the original 1937 film, calling it outdated and irrelevant, sparked an unexpected wave of backlash. For many, Snow White wasn't just an old movie. It was a cornerstone of Disney's legacy and a symbol of innocent fairy tale magic. Criticizing it felt to some like an insult to the very story that made Disney a household name.
The one where he was in the boxing ring.
Boxing ring, and Howard Cosell, who was then a famous announcer for ABC Sports, introduced him. And I was asked at some point to get Mr. Sinatra Listerine. You're at Madison Square Garden. It's not like there's a Listerine store in Madison Square Garden. So I dutifully ran out, found a drugstore of some sort. This is before CVS. This is 45 years ago.
When Rachel Zegler was cast as Snow White, many saw it as a bold but promising choice. Fresh off her breakout performance in West Side Story, Zegler had already proven she had the talent and charisma to lead a major production. She represented a new generation of actors, diverse, outspoken, and unafraid to break from tradition. At first, her casting was celebrated as a step toward greater inclusivity in Hollywood, but soon the conversation began to shift. In interviews promoting the film, Zegler made a series of comments that would spark a wave of controversy. She referred to the 1937 animated Snow White as outdated and implied that its core narrative, centered around a young princess waiting to be saved by a prince, was irrelevant in today's world. She spoke about wanting to portray a stronger, more independent Snow White who didn't need a romantic subplot to define her story. For some, her remarks were a refreshing take on an old classic. They appreciated her commitment to making Snow White a character with agency and depth. However, for longtime Disney fans, these comments felt like a dismissal of the beloved fairy tale's history and significance. The original Snow White wasn't just a product of its time, it was an achievement that changed animation forever. To fans who grew up cherishing the story, Zegler's words came across as disrespectful, as though she was looking down on the very role that had been entrusted to her. Social media exploded with criticism. Viral videos dissected every interview clip, framing Zegler as dismissive, condescending, and out of touch with Disney's fan base. Memes and edited sound bites spread rapidly, amplifying the narrative that she didn't respect the legacy of Snow White. The criticism wasn't limited to her portrayal of the character, it became personal. Some accused her of embodying what they saw as a broader issue in Hollywood, a desire to tear down the past in the name of progress. The backlash grew so intense that some fans began calling for a boycott of the film altogether. Hashtags criticizing the production trended across Twitter, and YouTube videos discussing her interviews racked up millions of views. The sentiment was clear. Many felt that Disney had chosen an actress who didn't seem to appreciate the cultural weight of her role.
The rice has to be body temperature, and if it takes too long to serve it, it's no longer body temperature. But what was interesting to me about him was he had 3 Michelin stars, and he was still trying to learn how to get better, how to be better.
Yes.
And I showed that to executives at Disney.
As details about the Snow White remake trickled out, it became clear that Disney wasn't just modernizing the beloved fairy tale, they were overhauling it entirely. One of the most controversial changes was the decision to replace the 7 dwarfs with a diverse group of magical companions. Disney explained that this shift was intended to avoid outdated stereotypes and offer a more inclusive portrayal. However, for many fans, the absence of the classic 7 dwarfs was a glaring omission that stripped the story of its original charm. The changes didn't stop there. Early reports suggested that the familiar storyline of Snow White's fateful encounter with the prince was being scrapped altogether. Instead of the classic true love's kiss moment, Snow White's journey was reframed as a solo quest for independence and self-discovery. The character was reimagined as a strong, determined leader focused on her kingdom's future, with no interest in romance. Critics of the film argued that these adjustments felt more like a rejection of the original story than a respectful update. For them, it wasn't about rejecting progress, it was about preserving the heart of a timeless tale. The very elements that made Snow White iconic, the dwarfs, the magic mirror, the fairy tale romance, seemed to be either removed or drastically reinterpreted. Fans feared that in the process of modernizing the story, Disney had lost what made it special in the first place. Comparisons to past Disney remakes flooded social media. Fans pointed to The Little Mermaid and Mulan 2020 as examples of how altering core story elements can spark intense backlash. With Mulan, the removal of beloved characters and the musical format alienated longtime fans, leading to lukewarm reviews and disappointing box office numbers. Many worried that Snow White was following the same path, doubling down on reinvention at the risk of alienating its core audience. Supporters of the remake, however, praised Disney for attempting to tell a more empowering story. They argued that updating classic tales was necessary to reflect modern values and provide young audiences with strong, relatable role models. To them, a Snow White who saved herself rather than waiting for a prince was a welcome evolution. But with each new announcement, the online debate intensified. The changes were seen by some as a bold step forward and by others as a step too far. The narrative shifted from being about artistic choices to a broader discussion about whether Hollywood was too focused on rewriting classics instead of creating original stories.
She's my best friend, and she's the one who like sent me the casting notice and said, "Thank me when you're famous." It's the craziest thing ever that it came true in that weird way, and that's why I bring her everywhere, and she's the best ever. But yeah, I put myself on tape. It's the worst tape you've ever seen in your life. I have no idea how I got the part still. And it's being used to teach future casting directors at NYU.
Beyond the creative changes, another aspect of Disney's Snow White remake began raising eyebrows: the budget. Reports revealed that the film's production costs had ballooned past $300 million, putting it in the same financial category as blockbuster superhero movies and epic franchises like Avengers, Endgame. But unlike those CGI-heavy spectacles, Snow White is, at its core, a simple fairy tale about a princess, an evil queen, and a journey of self-discovery. So why was the cost so astronomical? Insiders cited several factors driving up the budget. Elaborate, handcrafted sets designed to replicate an enchanted medieval world took longer to build than anticipated. Location shoots and high-end CGI effects for the magical companions added millions to the tab. Rumors of extensive rewrites and reshoots also emerged, with some suggesting that Disney had ordered major changes to the tone of the film after negative early feedback. These reshoots reportedly cost the studio an additional $10 to $15 million, further inflating the already massive budget. For critics, these budget issues felt eerily reminiscent of past Disney misfires. The 2012 sci-fi epic John Carter, which infamously cost Disney over $250 million, became a cautionary tale after it failed to connect with audiences and resulted in a catastrophic financial loss. Many feared Snow White could suffer the same fate, an over-budget project weighed down by production chaos and fan skepticism. Compounding these fears was the film's potential profitability, or lack thereof. With such an inflated budget, Disney would need a massive box office turnout just to break even, let alone turn a profit. And in an era where streaming services, movie theater hesitancy, and franchise fatigue have changed viewing habits, relying solely on nostalgia wasn't necessarily a safe bet. Behind the scenes, tensions reportedly grew as Disney scrambled to course correct. The studio made changes to its marketing strategy, replaced key members of the PR team, and attempted to control the narrative by emphasizing the empowering message of the film. However, each new teaser and promotional clip seemed to pour fuel on the fire rather than extinguish it, as fans took to social media to voice their discontent.
Is not designed right now to necessarily develop great leaders or to encourage more people to seek public office. It just is far more difficult. Now, I've never been in it, but from what I observe, it's far more difficult to run for office today than ever before.
As the controversy surrounding Snow White grew, Disney found itself fighting a battle it hadn't fully anticipated: the war for public perception. What began as a conversation about creative direction had snowballed into a cultural flashpoint, with fans, critics, and social commentators weighing in on everything from casting choices to Disney's broader corporate strategy. At the heart of the storm was Rachel Zegler. Every interview she gave became fodder for debate. Clips of her describing the original 1937 film as outdated and dismissing the traditional damsel in distress narrative were spliced together into viral social media posts. Whether her comments were taken out of context or not, the damage was done. The internet labeled her as disrespectful toward the legacy of Snow White, and the narrative that she was out of touch with the Disney fanbase spread like wildfire. Disney's attempts to defuse the situation often had the opposite effect. The studio's marketing heavily emphasized the modern, empowered Snow White narrative, doubling down on the very message that critics found divisive. The more Disney tried to spin the remake as a necessary evolution of the story, the more fans felt their concerns were being ignored. Online, hashtags calling for boycotts of the film trended regularly, and YouTube videos criticizing the production racked up millions of views. The controversy soon extended beyond Zegler's remarks. Fans began to question Disney's entire strategy of remaking animated classics. Was the studio genuinely trying to update beloved stories for a new generation, or was it chasing headlines and social commentary at the expense of nostalgia? For some, Snow White became a symbol of Hollywood's obsession with reboots and modernizations that alienate core audiences. Despite the backlash, some viewers defended Disney's vision. Supporters argued that representation and updated narratives are important steps toward more inclusive storytelling. They saw the criticism as an overreaction from traditionalists unwilling to accept change. However, even within these discussions, there was a sense that Disney's messaging had become muddled, with the focus shifting away from the magic of the story to the politics surrounding it. The stakes weren't just financial, they were cultural. If Snow White flopped, it wouldn't just be a box office failure, it would signal that Disney's strategy of remaking animated classics had reached its breaking point. The outcome of this battle wasn't just about one movie, it was about the future of how Disney tells stories and how far it could push modern reimaginings before losing its core audience. The Snow White controversy isn't just about one movie, it's part of a larger debate that has been building for years. How much can studios modernize beloved stories before they lose their essence? For many fans, Disney's live-action remakes have walked a fine line between honoring nostalgia and adapting to modern values. Early successes like Cinderella, 2015, and The Jungle Book, 2016, proved that it was possible to update classic tales while respecting their original charm. But as the remakes became more ambitious, reworking key characters, changing plots, and incorporating overt social commentary, the fan reactions became more polarized. In the case of Snow White, the debate became especially heated. At its core, the story is a simple fairy tale with timeless themes of kindness, innocence, and the triumph of good over evil. But for critics of the remake, Disney's changes, like the removal of the prince and the replacement of the seven dwarfs, felt like an unnecessary departure from the story's magic. They argued that modernizing characters and subplots shouldn't come at the cost of erasing what made the original beloved in the first place. On the other hand, supporters of the remake believe that stories must evolve to remain relevant. To them, portraying Snow White as a capable leader who doesn't need saving is empowering, not disrespectful. They see the changes as an opportunity to introduce younger audiences to a character who represents independence and resilience rather than passivity. However, the broader conversation isn't just about Snow White, it's about Hollywood's increasing reliance on nostalgia-driven content. Over the past decade, Disney has invested heavily in live-action remakes of its animated classics, capitalizing on the emotional connection audiences have with films from their childhood. But critics have questioned whether these remakes are truly necessary or whether they're symptomatic of a lack of original storytelling. Movies like Frozen and Encanto proved that new stories with fresh characters and original narratives could capture hearts and dominate the cultural landscape. So why, some fans ask, does Disney keep returning to the same well, risking fan loyalty with reinterpretations that seem to divide rather than unite? The Snow White controversy also taps into a larger cultural tension, the desire to preserve traditions versus the push for progress. While many agree that outdated tropes should be left behind, there's a delicate balance between modernizing a story and rewriting it entirely. When nostalgia is dismissed as irrelevant, fans who feel deeply connected to these stories can feel alienated. The live-action Snow White remake has become more than just a movie. It's a flashpoint in the ongoing debate over nostalgia, modernization, and the future of storytelling. What started as an ambitious attempt to reimagine a beloved classic has spiraled into a saga of fan outrage, PR missteps, and staggering financial stakes. For Disney, the stakes couldn't be higher. A successful release could reinforce their strategy of updating animated classics for a new generation, proving that even the most treasured stories can evolve without losing their magic. But if the film flops, it could send a powerful message that audiences are growing tired of Hollywood's obsession with reboots that stray too far from what made the original special. At the center of it all is Rachel Zegler, a young star caught in the crossfire of a cultural storm. Whether this project becomes a defining triumph or a career setback for her remains to be seen. Hollywood has a history of redemption arcs, and a single hit can shift public perception overnight. In the end, the Snow White remake isn't just about retelling a fairy tale. It's about how studios navigate the delicate balance between honoring tradition and embracing progress. As fans, creators, and critics wait for the final release, one thing is certain: this film's legacy will be written not only by box office numbers, but by how it resonates or fails to resonate with audiences worldwide.